Are Pokemon games actually getting worse, or is it just nostalgia? Let's find out. Generally speaking, most people's favorite Pokemon games are the first ones they've ever tried and completed, as well as thinking that every game that came out after to be getting worse. Why? Well, clearly Game Freak struck gold when they created the formula of capturing, battling, and evolving Pokemon, though the rate the games improve and change is still very slow, usually making the first experience we play to be the most fun and memorable, and anything after as just more of the same thing. Which is why I didn't play Soul Silver as much as I did Platinum, even though they are my first and second favorite Pokemon games respectively. And why I kind of dropped off at Gen 5 and played it for even less, because by that time I had been oversaturated by a not so different formula for 3 years. This is all subjective experience and doesn't actually reflect the quality of these games. Many people have the same experience as this with many other generations, and sometimes this cycle is seen in the sales of each Pokemon game. X and Y was when I really jumped back in again after a bit of a break, and the same cycle repeated with Sun and Moon being my least favorite games, while a friend of mine who played Sun and Moon as their first 3D Pokemon game is one of his favorites. Clearly, everyone has a different experience with where they gain and lose interest, but is this a byproduct of the games actually getting worse? I don't doubt that if you give a first-time player any Pokemon game from any generation, they'll enjoy it as the base formula of the game is very engaging. But a new Pokemon game is released nearly every year, which is what I think causes this lack of innovation between each title, resulting in this cycle of players leaving the series every couple of years. The games have definitely shifted focus over recent years. Gens 1 to 5 were primarily an RPG, meaning the focus was on the single-player experience, journeying through the region and catching and trading Pokemon. From Gens 1 to 4, they kept introducing new gameplay elements that would eventually solidify as the core formula used for the rest of the series' lifetime, like the physical and special move split. Although Gen 5 definitely based its identity more around its story than the region's journey, it still was very similar in focus to the previous titles. When Pokemon moved to the 3DS in Gen 6, this is where the biggest shift happened. The games started to become more focused on the online aspects of Pokemon battling, while relying on gimmicks to solely change up the core battle formula. Things like Mega Evolutions, Z-moves, and or Gen 8's Gigantamaxing. There was a clear downgrade in how the core gameplay and RPG elements were handled. They made XP gaining more generous overall, resulting in an easier and less meaningful single-player experience. Lack of care to the Pokemon and battle animations, though this was brushed over in Gen 6 since it was the first game to introduce the 3D models. As well as a reduction to the main and post-game content, resulting in a very quick and shallow story mode, all the while making the competitive aspects of the game much more accessible, which is great, but not when it affects the RPG elements negatively. X and Y, ORAS, and Sun and Moon didn't add anything substantial to the battle system, which resulted in all games basically being nearly identical from one another as they relied on the 3D models and different gimmicks to carry their shortcomings. While Gens 1 to 5 relied on the diversity of the region, Pokemon, story, and new gameplay elements to improve the package as a whole. Now, Sword and Shield was a hybrid of sorts, introducing the wild area but still keeping the regular style of encountering Pokemon, which was a step in the right direction, but it's easy to see that Gen 8 mainly focused on the online aspects, hence the max raid battle events, skippable grind, the bare bones single player experience, and unpolished battle animations, and other small features that a single player fan would only care about. Then comes Legends Arceus, having no online competitive battling, completely focusing on the single player experience, implementing new innovations like a seamless encounter to battle system, a completely open world environment with Pokemon that complement the world with their lively animations instead of just spawning in the masses, as well as a live catching system and strong and agile styles to moves. Overall, a much more polished game, but sadly the sales don't reflect that just yet. Clearly, Scarlet and Violet will be more online and competitive focused like Sword and Shield, which is now needed since the competitive scene has basically been the same for 3 years, but for a more offline player like me, I think Legends Arceus will still suit more of my gameplay wants. Though the animations of Pokemon and textures are looking to be more polished like seen in Legends Arceus, which is a great thing. So overall, Generations 1 to 5 look to polish and improve the base formula of Pokemon and its more traditional RPG elements, while Gen 6 to 8 look to improve the online competitive aspects in substitute for the quality of its more original RPG elements, resulting in less innovation with the series as a whole, but still growth for Pokemon as a franchise as seen with the game's sales and tournaments created over the years. So depending on what type of Pokemon player you are, you'll see this change in focus as either a good or bad thing. But then, what actually makes a good Pokemon game? You can find that out in the video in the end card.